Well, my guest tonight, I'm going to read a little bio here for you. You might find this, and you're going to find this wickedly off the wall tonight. This guy has been an active scuba diver since he started diving while stationed at Argentia back in 1984. He's been always interested in history, especially naval history. He became a member of the Newfoundland Marine Archaeological Society, and this is where his passion for the marine history of Newfoundland grew. While stationed in Key West, Florida, he enrolled in an underwater archaeology program sponsored by Mel Fisher Group, the discoverers of the famous Spanish fleet. During a subsequent tour in Newport, Rhode Island, he gained extensive field experience with the Rhode Island Marine Archaeological Project, worked on American Revolutionary shipwreck sites. This guy spent more time in the water than I have in the shower, I can guarantee you. In 1999, he started working with Ocean Quest Adventures as a dive master and gave numerous interpretive tours of Belle Island shipwrecks. Shortly thereafter, he earned his master's license and became the skipper of the Ocean Quest. Over the past 12 years, there's been hundreds of dives and non-dives alike on the Ocean Quest. They've all been welcomed aboard by my guest tonight and his loyal crew. Always updating the vast knowledge of these important shipwrecks, his wisdom is constantly sought. And my guest tonight is William Flaherty, better known as Skipper Bill. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here tonight.
Well, this is a talk down memory lane, and although a lot of people have spoke about the shipwrecks on the show last 2 years, and everybody on Belle Island knows what happened about the sinking, you're going to bring us insights tonight that we've never seen. So just tell me what happened on the morning of September 5th, 1942 at Lance Cove.
Well, as Steve Neary said in his book, Enemy on Our Doorstep, they were actually here on our doorstep in Belle Island. This was the first successful attack by the German forces on North America. So the door was open, they were here. So on that particular date, the U-513 had departed Kiel, Germany on its first mission to come over and sink Allied shipping off the Straits of Belle Island. Going in that area, though, they realized there weren't any ships available to sink. So, unfortunately for Belle Island, they came down here. And it was well known prior to 1939 that the Germans had taken most of the ore out of these mines to use over in Germany to build their war machinery. So they knew of the possibilities of finding some targets here. So they did arrive on the 5th of September 1942. They came in through the Tickle, unbeknownst of the Evelyn B., who unfortunately was just above them. The U-boat was underneath them. So they came in, and it was late in the evening. Early the next morning, they rose up just off of the southern end of Belle Island, and they spied the Saginaga and the Lord Strathcona sitting at anchor, fully laden down with iron ore. This was an unskilled crew on their first mission. They fired 2 torpedoes, but in their excitement of this occasion, they neglected to set the charge or the running mechanism on their torpedoes. Torpedoes were fired and fell onto the seafloor, so they were ineffective. Immediately, the captain fired 2 more torpedoes, and they were direct hits on the SS Saginaga, taking the ship and his crew down. The Lord Strathcona at that time observed this happening, and they in turn abandoned ship to rescue their shipmates.
Were there many people killed the first time? I don't recall.
Approximately 28 people were killed on the first ship.
Okay.
And then, as I said, the Lord Strathcona, they abandoned ship, so there was no
how
loss
were
of life.
this submarine able to get into, Conception Bay so easily?
Good question. Well, this was as I said, this is the first attack on North America. So the defenses at the time, as you can see even today, just above where the ferry comes in, there's 2 4.7-inch artillery guns mounted up there. That was the primary defense that was to be used at the time. But unfortunately, the arc or the range of these guns was ineffective due to where the attack occurred off the southern end of Belle Island. So they were successful.
Yeah, and they were able to get into I would call it the Narrows, come in
Right.
totally undetected.
Totally undetected. They were underwater, and when they commenced the attack that morning, they actually had to surface to do that.
Go on.
Now,
Yeah, and being in the tickle for so long, this is something that's not a question here. Being in the tickle for so long, would they have to surface very much? You know, because submarines then and now are completely different. How often would they have to surface before they left the area?
Well, at that time, not only, like I said, it was at nighttime, it was early morning, and there was a low sky, it was a misty day, so visibility was very limited. So they didn't have to stay underwater very long. You know, just you can look out any time out the bay here and see how foggy it is, even this evening.
And their targets were the iron ore boats, obviously,
the iron
with a specific
ships,
purpose.
Exactly.
Okay. And tell me exactly, why were they sunk? Was there like a deep-seated reason besides the fact that you want to get rid of iron ore boats? And
well, another question you probably ask is, why didn't they fire their torpedoes at the Dominion Pier or the Scotia Pier? Because then they could have stopped the shipping of iron ore altogether. Well, my theory is, from studying the forces back then, the submarine forces, German submarine forces. One of the things you have to know is they're a very elite force back then, as any submarine force is even today. And to them, the thing was to get tonnage, as much tonnage as possible. You were revered when you got back to Germany as a hero, as a welcoming knight. When you got back, you got the best of everything, and it was based on tonnage. And that meant shipping, not piers or strategic things ashore.
Okay, so it was like counting up strokes.
Right.
Right, if you could sink 10 ships, there's 12 ships.
They would have a banner hanging from the mast of their U-boat when they pulled back into Germany.
Like an Air Force ace.
Yes,
but you're doing it underneath the water.
That's right.
Okay. And are you aware if some of the Germans, or many of the Germans, or if any of the German submariners at the time were aware of Belle Island itself, or... You know, did they have experience coming in and out?
Yes, good question. Because, as I said, up to 1939, the Germans, well, first you need to know, after the First World War, Germany had lost that war. And not only did they lose the war, they lost their ability to build up their industry. A section of Germany called the Alsace-Lorraine was taken over by the French as a part of the armistice, signing of the armistice, all right? So because they lost that ability to procure ore in their own country, they relied on the ore coming out of Belle Island.
And they had great success with the ore coming from Belle Island.
Yes, it was the best kind of ore they could get, and they brought it back in the form of torpedoes.
Yeah, well, thank you, Newfoundland. And you, there's a question here too, since you obviously you've researched this. What was the prevailing mood on Belle Island after that attack? Because you must have talked to people on the Ocean Quest.
Yeah, I've actually have letters. I've received letters from residents here on the island, and they would relate to me what was going on or what they saw on that particular day. If I could just say, one was just one of the letters I received was the son of Nish Jackman, who I'm sure most of your listeners tonight know. Nish, right? This is Mike Jackman. Related to me the story of what he saw, you know, the sinking of the Saginaga, how upon the impact of the torpedoes, the ship came, the bow and the stern and the front and the back part came together during that explosion, and the ship went down in like 30 seconds because there was thousands of tons of iron ore on these ships. 30 seconds. Yeah, and I, as a scuba diver who's dove on these wrecks, we've actually been on all these wrecks, obviously. But on the Saginaga, what's interesting is you see the anchor chain from the bow or the front of the ship stretch right across to the midsection or the middle of the ship, and the anchor is laying on that deck. So you could see like the force of that explosion, you know, what it did to the ship. Okay. So that's only one story. Then there's one more I want to tell you real quick is Victor Bennett. Again, a name here on the island, well known, right? He relates a story where he was here as a young fellow of 14, out fishing off of Kelly's Island that morning when the first explosion occurred.
Go on, I never heard the story.
How they were shocked, you know, and they went ashore on Kelly's Island, and as they were there, they watched the ships in the area start firing their guns at what they perceived was a periscope in the water, and aircraft actually flew over. So that was, again, a personal story, you know, of a young fellow.
I'm just trying to think back to that time. I mean, you know, torpedoes being launched at ships. You're in North America. You figure you're so far divorced from the Second World War, from the theater of war itself, and there it is, right on your doorstep.
On your doorstep, exactly.
Right. Yeah. the mood had to be just unbelievable because there was no large force on Belle Island to repel any kind of attack.
No, there was only a limited forces were on the island, and only after that first attack did they increase their defenses for the second attack in November.
Okay. And of course, we're trying to move this along. This is unbelievably fantastic to me because I love history. What happened? I know what happened, I say, because it's been recorded, but what really happened on November 2nd in 1942?
Believe it or not, on December 2nd, the same thing. Another U-boat came in.
Was it another U-boat?
Yeah, another U-boat. A different U-boat
came
in.
Okay, second U-boat came in.
Yeah, second U-boat came in based on what they knew occurred back in September. The captain of the U-boat in November said, well, might as well go in there again and try it again.
Might as well have a go.
Sure enough.
Yeah.
Well, he came in and he actually fired his first torpedo, and it struck Scotia Pier. So there we have the first successful attack on land, a landmass being attacked by enemy forces.
Your research, was that a deliberate attack on the pier, or was it a miss?
It was a miss, and I just recently found out he fired at the Flyingdale, which was tied up at the Scotia Pier at the time, awaiting loading of ore. Since there was no ore in the vessel, it was pretty high up the water. So when a torpedo was fired, it went underneath it and struck the wharf. Blew the wharf up, and now, we were asking about the mood of the people on the island.
Yes.
Well, this being the second attack, what happened then was it was a Sunday morning. People were actually getting their breakfast, so they put their best clothes on. They were getting ready for the occupation of Belle Island by German forces. They figured this is it. They're here now. Because, as you know, the island is all comprised of mines.
Yeah.
So upon that impact, everything was moving in the cupboards, the dishes and all that were rattling.
Yeah, I can remember my mother telling me she lived on the opposite side of the island and the building shook.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And just after being attacked a little less than 2 months later, off comes the second one, and this time was at the pier and the boats.
Yeah, he fired that torpedo, he struck the wharf, and then immediately after that, he fired 2 torpedoes, taking the Rosecastle down, and then 1 torpedo took down the PLM-27.
Any loss of life on the second time around?
On the second time around, in total, there was actually 70 lives lost of 3 ships in total. So.
That's incredible, especially when you think you're in North America at the time. They crossed a lot of water to get to Belle Island.
Yeah, they certainly did. These U-boats were designed for long-range attacks. They were 13,000 miles was their distance they could travel. They carried 22 torpedoes, so they were well armed.
Do you think, because they had spent a bit of time here in the Tickle, do you think that they ever surfaced and maybe the submariners came on the island themselves, disguised some way?
Well, there are rumors.
Yes, that's why I've heard the rumors.
There are rumors on the second attack that the captain was actually at a dance here on Belle Island, and who knows? There's also, as a diver, 12, 13 years now out there in the bay and going out every season for months at a time and taking people out, I've heard rumors of U-boats actually hiding in the like where the clapper is. You're familiar with the clapper,
yes,
the tunnel of rock there.
Yeah.
U-boats going in there, but that's physically impossible. But again, during those times, with the media the way it was, and the blackouts of news reporting and that, and sightings, and the island itself, there was restrictions on lights. Car lights were sheltered lights.
Yeah.
There were air wardens. There was restrictions on access to certain areas. So there was always a sense of, of danger somewhere here.
Yeah, and did U-518, that was one of
the second attack.
Did it have a more sinister mission that you're aware of?
Yes,
certainly. Now, this is something I've never heard.
Yeah, so there's actually, I mentioned Steve Neary's book, Enemy on a Doorstep, but there's also another book by the title of Cargo of Lies, and that relates to the second attack to a agent that was sent over on a U-518. He was actually on a mission here to penetrate Canada as a spy. So he was landed in New Carlisle, Quebec. The thing about that story is it's a wonderful book to read because you'll also read about what happened here in the Conception Bay, Belle Island area. But he became a double agent for Canada, the first one ever during the Second World War.
Oh, fascinating.
So the problem with not the problem, but the interesting part about the story, he was also the quickest captured spy in history, I suppose. What happened is,
good at it.
No, he was brought over and he was taken up to the Straits of Belle Island as what happened to the other U-boat. There was nothing there, so they spent a considerable amount of time up there on a U-boat, a diesel U-boat, submarine, They came all the way down here and spent a couple of days in this area, and also not only sinking ships here in Conception Bay, but also outside in the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Then finally he was landed ashore in the early morning hours in New Carlisle, Quebec. By the time he got to a lodging that he could stay at that day, he stunk like diesel fuel. And him being on a U-boat for probably 30 days or so by then, he didn't realize the smell, like he had bad
Right,
BO.
yeah.
So by the time he went ashore, it was pretty evident there was something wrong. So,
Pretty easy to track.
yeah, he was tracked and he was captured and he became a double agent, a very ineffective one, but a double agent.
All right. Ocean Quest. Ocean Quest is
Yeah.
big, and they're really big on Bell Island. And I'll tell you, Bell Islanders here can't appreciate it enough because I know how much you guys want to get involved in the island.
Yeah.
You've been diving down on the old wrecks. What would you like to see happen to those wrecks?
Yeah. Well, we've been trying to do for the past 12 years. That's Rick Stanley, the owner of the company. Is we've been trying to get them protected under a historical Resources Act or some sort of protection, a marine park, for example, because we do have with the diving community nowadays, they're more trained and they have the equipment and the ability to dive deeper and longer, and it's easier for people to go to sites that, say, 20 years ago, nobody would have thought of diving over 100 feet on a wreck. So there's always a susceptibility of artifacts being removed from these historical
And there's
wrecks.
still a fair amount of artifacts
Yes,
down there.
certainly.
And that's the way it should be.
Yes, exactly. These ships are the day they were sunk, they were as they were then, they are today. I mean, you'll find personal effects, like glasses, shoes, clothing, no human remains, but
Yeah. That's long
and
gone, but-
not only that, we've over the years, the past few years, with the introduction of the internet, people had lost relatives back then. Their relatives today are going into their genealogy, and they find out they lost a father, grandfather, or uncle.
Okay.
Here, where back then they were told they were lost in the North Atlantic somewhere because of restrictions on media. They wouldn't tell people where ships were sunk.
Sure.
So
Yep.
we've had relatives come here and actually dive on these ships.
Okay. Well, Skipper Bill, I was told this is going to be the 70th anniversary coming up September
Yes.
of the first torpedo strike.
That's
Are there
right.
any big major plans coming up? I know I was told tonight
Yeah.
that the Lance Cove area is probably, or somebody involved, is going to be something
Yeah.
big because it should be. It's 70 years.
Yes, exactly.
Is Ocean Quest getting involved in this?
Yes, we will be involved, and not only us, but I'm sure the local Legion, Canadian Legion Branch 8, is going to be involved, and we're hoping to get something going on down at the Seamen's Memorial in Lance Cove. If you've been down there recently, you probably realize it does need some cleaning up and get it ready for this memorial service, and hopefully that'll be on the occasion of the first attack on September 5th this year.
And do you have any last words before I close this off tonight?
We're not only divers, we also offer tours,
Sure.
interpretive tours. So
And
feel
you've been
free
a
to come
great,
down.
proud sponsor of Bell Island Radio.
Oh yes, certainly. I think this is the best thing. Community radio is for the community, so the community should get involved.
And there's no problem to get on your tours.
None at all. It'll be a pleasure to be your guest for your day out on the bay. Just contact us at oceanquestadventures.com.
And Skipper Bill will be your captain. And this is Henry Crane signing off for tonight. We're going to sign off with a ghost story. And it's called, thanks to a friend of mine on Bell Island Radio, it's going to be called Children's Gulch. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.